So this is example 2 of how to combine rational expressions with different denominators. So step 1, we said let's put parentheses in all of our expressions. And then at this point, you should factor denominators that can be factored. Okay, and then consider the exponent of each factor and write the factor separately. So let's factor denominators first. Okay, so this one here, this one is a GCF. X is common. And this one is already factored. But what I mean is when you say consider the exponent of each factor and write the factors separately. So what does that mean? Okay, so we have to rewrite this as 7. Okay, consider the exponent 3. So it would be better to write it separately, x times x times x. Okay, so every time you see a factor that has an exponent or multiplied by itself so many times, you have to write it separately like this. Okay, that's very important. So this one here is 2. Okay, x is common. Times, if we pull out x there, that will be x. If we pull out x there, that will be negative 2. Okay, so this is now in the factored form. So now we're going to get the least common denominators because we want to make these denominators the same before we can combine them. So in the first example, I told you to look for common factors. So this is an x and this one as 1x. That's why it's important that you write them separately. Okay, because they only have 1x in common, not 3 x's. So we will cover that and we will cover the other x like that. And then whatever is left here, we're going to lift that and multiply it with this factor. And whatever is left here, we're going to multiply this fraction up and down with that one. So I don't have much space here. So let's just try. So this one I'm going to multiply with 7 x times x. Let's just make some space here. Okay, so I'm going to multiply that with, I'm going to use red. So we're going to multiply this with these 3 factors, 7x and x. So let's multiply that with 7, x and x. Also this one with 7, x and x. Okay, that's not very neat, but we will arrange that in the next step. Okay, so this one we're going to multiply with this x minus 2 and x minus 2. And this one also with x minus 2. Okay, so this one, another strategy that you can use instead of really covering them like that, if you like, you can do that. But these pieces of paper are not always available. So you can just highlight this, okay, and that will tell you that that is common. And that will not be included in the multiplication anymore. Okay, so try to pause the video and try to really understand that part of the simplification. So as you could see now, these denominators are the same. We have 3 x's, we have a 7 and an x minus 2 here. Here we have 3 x's, a 7 and an x minus 2. So we have found our least common denominator and we can combine these two fractions. So let's just write our least common denominator as 7, 3 x's, and an x minus 2. Okay, and the top we have to multiply that, so that's going to be 14 times x times x times x. So that will just be 14x to the third power. That's a plus, so we don't have to worry about the signs. Signs do not change. So distribute this. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Okay, when it is a plus, you just keep the signs. When it is a minus here, you have to multiply your answers with negative 1. Okay, so then the next step will be to combine numerator. Combine like terms in denominator. Okay. So there is no common terms here, so I think this is our answer. And I think this is not factorable, okay, because this is a cube. Okay, it cannot be a bottom up because this is 3, not 2. So this is not factorable. So let's just clean it up a bit. So that will be 14x to the 3. You can use parentheses or not, it's up to you. Okay, and the denominator will be, okay, before we combine this, let's just try to see our limitations. X not equal to 7 will never be 0, so we just disregard that. This will be 0. Okay, when these are 0, our denominator is 0. We do not say 0, 0, 0. We just write it once. And this one will be 0, this factor, when this is 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. Okay, and then let's clean this up. So that will be 7x to the 3 times x minus 2. We don't have to multiply this. We can just leave it like that in factored form. And again, I taught you in class, do not cancel this x over 3 and this x over 3. You can only cancel parentheses, okay? The entire parenthesis. You cannot cancel parts of a parenthesis. Okay, so let's go to another one here. This is another example, okay? Classic, they will always give you something like this. At first glance, these two are different, okay? But with some manipulation, we can make them the same, okay? Not all the time, but in this case, I think we can. So let's write it, negative 4 over 5 minus p plus 3 over p minus 5. Okay, so they look the same, p and 5, only their signs are different. So maybe we could just manipulate this to look like this, or this to look like this. I prefer this one, so let's convert this. I like this because it's p minus 5. You are more used to it, the letter before the number. So let's just try to see if we can convert this to look like that, okay? So it will now be a common factor. So maybe if we try to factor out negative 1 from 5, so that will be negative 5. If we factor out the negative 1 here, that will just be positive p. Okay, so and this one, so it's the same, right? This is negative times negative, that becomes positive 5. This is negative 1 times positive p, that's negative p. So we just write it in factored form, but the value is the same. It's just different form. And then we can still rewrite it like this, negative 1. And I could write the p minus 5, p minus 5. Okay, you can change the order. Addition is commutative. So now we have to we have a common factor p minus 5. Okay, so they are now the same. Okay, so now we will cover the common factor, or like what we said, we just try to highlight it. Okay, or if you like to cover it, that's okay too. Okay, so that is, these are different denominators but with a common factor p minus 5. Okay, so we will just lift this and multiply this top and bottom, the one that's remaining, -1. And then here there is nothing left, so we will, or just 1, or we will multiply this with 1/1. That's okay too. So again, so this one, so if you are used to covering them up, just cover them like that, if it's up to you, and then multiply what remains on the denominator here with this fraction here, and there is nothing here that remains, so, or just 1, so we multiply it by 1. It doesn't really change anything, so you can even skip that part. Okay, so since there is nothing left here, this is a common factor, then you don't multiply this with anything, or just 1/1. Okay, so this doesn't change anything. This will be negative. So now their denominator is the same. Okay, the common denominator is -1 and p minus 5. -1 and p minus 5. -1 and p minus 5. Okay, the numerator here will be -4. And the numerator here will be -3. So let's combine the numerator. That's -7. And this is -1. Okay, we can also put a parenthesis there. P minus 5. Okay, and we could do a final simplification, dividing -7 and -1. That will just be +7 divided by p minus 5. Here you could put parentheses, or you could leave it like that because there are no other parentheses with it. So our limitation will be, when will our denominator be 0 here? When p is 5. This will never be 0. So p cannot be equal to 5. We have another example in our next video.